Hi, I'm Christine. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm here with all of my 5-star reads for July through September of 2025. I love doing these kind of quarterly check-ins of all of my 5-star reads for the past few months. So today is the third check-in of 2025. So these are all my 5-star reads for July, August, and September. And I'm so very excited to talk about them. I will link below the videos that I've done earlier in the year. So I have one for January, February, March, and then for April, May, June. I will link both of those below as well because I feel like it's so fun to see all the 5-star books that people read throughout the year. So that's what I'm here to do today, is to quickly just rehash and talk about all of my favorites for each month. So excited to get into them. I will link every book below, so if you want to go check them out, grab them for yourself, because obviously I recommended these. The title, the authors, are all going to be listed in the description of the video. I also have my Goodreads linked below, which I review every book that I talk about, so if you want to hear me gush even more about any of these books, hear my full thoughts on any of them, all of that is linked in the description of the video, so let's get into it. Alright, so July was my best reading month of the year as far as 5-star books. I had 9 5 stars for July, so let's get into these. First up is Until You by Judith McNaught. You know that I am obsessed with Judith McNaught this year. This entire summer I read so many of her books and I'm absolutely obsessed with her historical romances. So Until You is book 3 in her Westmoreland series saga, which is following the Westmoreland family, and this one, absolutely loved it. It's so good. You're gonna hear me say I love all these books because I truly do. That's why they're 5 stars for me. This one though was so much fun. So it is a historical romance between an American heroine who is kind of like a companion, a chaperone to an American heiress who is supposed to come to England to marry this baron. And so actually the woman that she's the chaperone for ends up eloping and taking off on the ship and marries somebody else on their way to England to get herself married. And so the heroine is kind of like struggling with how, when she gets to England, she's going to explain to the man who's supposed to marry that woman she's with that she has disappeared and ran off with somebody else. So she's dealing with that while she's coming to England. And then back in England, we cut to the hero's POV, and he is an earl, and he is actually on his way home one night, and his carriage, he actually has like a hit and run. He actually ends up running over and killing the baron that this other woman is supposed to marry. And so he feels horrible, feels terrible, wants to go to the baron's family's house and apologize, make amends. And when he gets there, the butler is pretty much like, he had no family, but he had this woman about to show up and get married to him, an American heiress. And so the hero's like, I will show up tomorrow at the shipping yard, apologize, and do all the things to make amends to this family. So the next day, the heroine lands in England, and then the hero is there to apologize to the woman that she is the chaperone for. And along the way, there is like a miscommunication, which Judith McNaught is so amazing at, where the heroine is on her way to tell the hero that the woman that is supposed to be marrying the baron has run away and married somebody else. But before she can tell him, the hero thinks it is her who is supposed to marry this baron. And then the heroine gets hit on the head with something at the shipping yard, loses all of her memory, wakes up with amnesia, has no idea who she is, what she's doing in England. And so the hero just kind of like wrongly assumes that she was there to marry the baron, and he wants to make amends. And so he's like, I'm gonna make this up to you. Maybe you and I should get married. You should stay at my house, all the things. So hopefully you're still with me following along, because I feel like this one just needs all the setup for it, but it's just so much fun. I love the layered and nuance to Judith McNaught's writing. Hers always, like, I feel like center around miscommunication, especially in this case, because I mean, hello, it's amnesia. So the whole thing is going to be a miscommunication. And I just feel like the way that she works it into her books just works so well. Like, miscommunication is such a common thing that happens every day, all the time with everybody, like in real life. So I feel like it's so fun to read about an author who really like understood that and got that and writes it into her books so well. It works for me immensely. Like, I cannot gush enough about her books. I love them to pieces. I feel like everything in her books, it just makes sense for the story, for the plot, for the characters. All the miscommunication works for me. The way she writes her characters works. I love her books so much. I could talk about them for years, but I won't, because I have another one to talk about soon too. So this is Until You, Judith McNaught, amnesia, historical romance. I love it so much. All right, next up is Eclipsed Empire by Tessa Hale. So this is book 2 in the Wolves of Crescent Creek series. Love this whole trilogy so much. This one was so good. I love the stunning PR cover that I got. It came with like the pretty sprayed edges and all the foiling. This is the follow-up to book 1, which is Crescent Kingdom. So you definitely have to read this trilogy in order, because the whole trilogy is following the same characters and the same like overarching plot throughout. So this is a why choose wolf shifters, paranormal, fated mates, heroine in hiding, kind of hiding her true identity type of situation. So in this one we follow Ren and her 5 mates. They're all wolf shifters, and then Ren as well. She's half wolf shifter and half caster, so she has some like magic powers that she is trying to keep a secret for reasons. And I just love this series so much. So book 2 kind of continues on right where book 1 left off. Can't really get into it too much because, like I mentioned, they all leave off on cliffhangers. But overall, the plot is that Rin and her 5 mates are kind of falling for each other, kind of figuring out how they're going to work in each other's lives. Some people are more willing to accept the bond, some are kind of fighting against the bond, and so it kind of continues there. And then as well as we see them all kind of taking on this big bad throughout the trilogy, and it's just so good. I love this one. This is book 2 in the trilogy, and it's just so good. All right, next up is another historical romance. So this is Marion Winterbourne by Lisa Kleypas. Here is the really pretty cover, and then we have a gorgeous step back for this one as well. So this is book 2 in her Ravenelle series, which I have been a co-host for a Lisa Kleypas Ravenelle's read-along for this entire year. So I am rereading the whole series, and so this one is one of my favorites in the series, and it continued to be one of my favorites upon a reread as well. Book 1 in the series, Cold Hearted Rake, actually perfectly sets up the setup for the characters in this one and their relationship. So I highly recommend reading that book because it definitely leads into Helen and Rhys's story so well. Helen Ravenelle is kind of a shyer, kind of keeps to herself. She's not outspoken. She kind of just blends into the background as a bit of a wallflower, but she definitely has her own thoughts. She just doesn't always feel the need to say them because other people around her maybe talk more than her. So I love that about her character. Could definitely relate, where sometimes you just kind of like let other people say what they want, do what they want, and you're just kind of like in the background with your own thoughts, but you don't have to be like heard all the time. And then here we have Rhys Winterbourne, who is one of Lisa Kleypas's ultimate heroes. This guy, Lisa Kleypas writes self-made men heroes so well, and Rhys Winterbourne is definitely that. I love seeing him in the series and the way that he sees and wants Helen for himself and is determined to win her, woo her, all the things. And he has the money to back it up and spoils her and takes care of her family, all the things. It's just so good. I love their pairing so much and seeing them kind of work together in their relationship, as well as some things that Helen is kind of trying to keep a secret and kind of some other things in her background and her story that she's dealing with in this story as well. It's just so good. It's chef's kiss. So good. One of my favorites in the Ravenelles series. So that is Marion Winterbourne by Lisa Kleypas. Next is Chasing Shelter by Catherine Cowles. This is book 5 in her Sparrow Falls series. I love this whole series. All the books have been 5 stars for me, so I've definitely talked about this series a ton this year. This is a small town, a single dad, romantic suspense, neighbors to lovers romance. And here we're following the hero. He's a single dad to his young daughter. And I love in here how the heroine is their new next door neighbor, and she very much is the opposite of the hero. Like if you've seen those houses where one's like all black and one's like super colorful and pink, the heroine would definitely be that. She loves to like paint rainbows and wear pink sparkly bows and just do all the fun things that the hero's daughter is into, where the hero's maybe more grumpy, broody, keeps to himself. And so it was so much fun seeing their pairing. The hero and the heroine, they already have a bit of a history and they know one another, because if you've read the rest of the series, you will see how their kind of friends and family is kind of centered around one another as well. So in here, the heroine's brother is best friends with the hero, and so her brother basically wants to make sure that she's safe, protected for things in her past. So he decides to move her in right next door to the hero, and so it goes from there. So good. All the protective vibes, the romantic suspense worked so well. I just love this series of pieces. A grumpy single dad and the neighbors to lovers setup. I just love this one to pieces. This is Chasing Shelter by Catherine Cowles. All right, the next two I read for the historical fiction readathon that I co-hosted with Tori from Novel Life. We have a historical fiction book club, which is Leave It to the Pros, and we had a readathon in July, and I read these both for the readathon and loved them to pieces. First up is The Women on Platform 2 by Laura Anthony. This is going to be one of my favorites of the year, so you're going to hear me talk about it a ton. I've probably already talked about it a ton as well in other videos, but this one was so good. Had me feeling all the feels, getting mad, getting angry, feeling happy for the things that the women in the story were able to do, just knowing the history of it and how that kind of played into the book. So good. It makes you feel all the things, so definitely know it has some heavy content warning in here. This book takes place in the 1970s in Dublin, Ireland, and it is following this true story of following these trailblazing women who were pushing for women's rights and for women to be able to have contraception, the birth control pill, all the things in Dublin, Ireland in the 1970s. And so I loved the way that this book told the history, as well as being in dual timeline and really bringing you into the story and you just wanting to follow along on all these different women's stories. They're all kind of in different places, and you see how it was illegal at the time for women back then to have access to any type of birth control, and you see how that affects all these women in different ways. And it's just so good, and it's wild that this happened in the 1970s in Ireland. Ireland. It's wild that things are happening today with dealing with this in the real world. I just love this book to pieces. All the emotional feels, like I said, super heavy content warning, so just know that going in, but so powerful, so good. I'm so glad I read this book. One of my favorites of the year, like the social justice, women's rights. If you're into any of that, highly recommend. All right, the second historical fiction is The Things We Cannot Say by Kelly Rimmer. This one I loved. This was actually the first time I picked up this author, and I have always heard amazing things and have just been meaning to pick up her books, and I'm so glad I did. This book is told in dual timeline. It's a World War II historical fiction, and where we're following a woman in the current day, current times, and she is a busy mom to 2 children. So her son actually has autism, and her daughter is like kind of gifted, has a super high IQ, and so she's very much kind of trying to balance her children, help them out on the daily basis, and also kind of balancing that with taking care of her beloved grandmother who is ill and in the hospital, and they don't think she's going to be lasting, making it very long. So her grandmother actually suffered like a head injury, and so the doctors and people at the hospital, they think that her grandmother is no longer able to communicate or making much sense. So the main character, the heroine, ends up realizing that her grandmother maybe just needs another way to communicate, and so because of her son and him having autism and using echolalia and different like communication devices and apps, they're able to communicate with her grandmother, and basically the grandmother's like, I want you to go to Poland and find some things out. And so the heroine ends up doing that, and then we cut to the flashbacks, the dual timeline going back to World War II, Nazi-occupied Poland. And it goes from there, and both storylines I was just invested in and loved so much. Definitely a strong, powerful one, another emotional one, very like family centric. I really loved this book, and I definitely want to check out more from this author now. All right, the next up is another Judith McNaught. So this is Once and Always, Judith McNaught. I absolutely love her book so much. This cover is so stinking pretty. I love the like very 80s vibe of the heroine's makeup and the full like wraparound scene. I wish they still made historical romances like this. This one is just so good. Another one of my absolute favorites from Judith McNaught. So in this book, we're following an American woman who her parents end up passing away. So it's her and her sister, and they have no more living relatives in America. And so basically their lawyer, their solicitor is like, hey, you actually have to go to England because you have this like distant, estranged grandmother there, as well as your mother mentioned this other family who wants to like look after you, take care of you, all the things. So the heroine and her sister travel to England, and when they get there, the grandmother is like, yeah, I want the other sister, the good, the nice one, not the one who reminds me of her mother. Like, I don't want the heroine around me. Like, that girl was trouble. Her mother was. I don't want her in my life. And so she kind of pawns the heroine off to this other man who was kind of like a family friend slash he wanted to date the heroine's mother at one point in the past. It's not weird, I promise. So he kind of becomes her guardian, and she goes to live with him while her younger sister goes to live with their estranged grandmother. So it goes from there, and the heroine is basically in this house with this man who used to love her mother and really wants their families to be connected. So he decides to tell the world that the heroine and his son are engaged. So he puts like an announcement in the paper. So the heroine and then the hero, who is the son of that guy, they both are like, what the heck are you talking about? Like, we don't even know each other. How are we engaged? Like, why did you announce this engagement? We don't even know one another. And so we cut to the hero being super mad and angry because obviously he's not trying to get married. He's had some tragedy in his past, and for reasons why he never wants to remarry or do any of those things. And so you see a lot of that like torturedness in his past, which I always am down bad for a tortured hero. So this had like just all the things that work for me. I loved in here the heroine. She's just so spirited and fun, and I love how she's opinionated and not afraid to tell the hero off. They have a lot of like miscommunication, of course, which like I mentioned, Judith McNaught is like the queen of that, but it works so well for me, and it like makes sense for the characters when they're already like in this kind of like misunderstanding. They're not getting along. They're not the best of friends. Like, obviously they're not going to communicate. They're not going to share every like deep dark secret with one another. They're gonna like assume the worst. They're gonna mishear a little part of a conversation and assume it means something else. Like, all the things. It just works for me so well. Like, I love her books. Like I mentioned earlier, I could talk about them for years and years, but I will not. But I love this one. It's just so good. It's one of my favorites from her. I highly recommend, but definitely know it's like old school historical romance, and it has more like dubious situations, dubious consent at times, and miscommunication and all of those things, but I eat it up, and I feel like it's just so nuanced, and I just love conversations around her books. So yeah, highly recommend this one. All right, then another historical romance, which is going to be one of my favorites of the year. This is Morning Glory by Laverell Spencer. This one has a gorgeous cover, which thankfully I was able to find a local copy of this one after reading and loving it. And it has this gorgeous like a cutout, a step back moment. So I actually had been wanting to read this one for years. People have recommended this one to me a ton, and I'm so glad I finally got to it. Kind of wish I would have got to it sooner, but it's totally fine. It happened in the right time. This one I loved. Laurel Spencer has a ton of historical romance audiobooks like on Hoopla, so definitely check out like your library resources if you can, because that's where I read it. And then like I mentioned, I was lucky enough to find a physical copy of it at a local used bookstore like a week later, and I'm so glad I did because it's one of my favorites. So this one takes place in the 1940s in the US, and the heroine is actually a widowed single mom. So she has 2 young children. She actually has a 3rd son on the way. She's about to pop. She's pregnant. And so she needs help at her house / her farmland, kind of all the things. And so she puts this advert in the paper where basically she's like, need a husband who wants to come and help me, kind of a marriage of convenience where you help with the land, have a place to live, I will feed you, all the things. And so nobody has kind of taken her up on it. The heroine and her family have a very like interesting past as well, very like complicated in the town, a lot of scandal around them. So nobody's like trying to help her, which is actually pretty tragic what happens to kind of her family in the past. You see that in the prologue. So we see that it's been like months since she's put this advert out. Nobody's answering it until the hero rolls up into town. And so he is an ex-con, he served in prison and he's out now, and he's having a hard time like keeping a job. He needs money, nobody wants to hire him. He can't even afford money to feed himself or get clothing, so he kind of like steals clothes from clothing lines, steals food out of the trash, like whatever he can do to survive, he's been doing it. And so when he sees the advert in the paper, he's like, absolutely yes, let me go and meet her. And so he shows up and they actually really hit it off, and they decide to see how it goes, kind of like a trial period where they become friends really quickly. And this one, just so good. If you love a sweet hero who is down to help out the heroine with any of the things with her and they become like true partners, true friends first, this book is definitely that. Very slow burn, but I was obsessed with this book. You see quite a lot of time between the characters of them really becoming friends, becoming partners, of taking care of the land. The hero has a really sweet relationship with the librarian in town because he is just like determined to learn, determined to take on new tasks and help out wherever he can. So if he needs to learn about bees, learn about like carpentry skills, anything, he will go down to the library, check out some books, talk to the librarian. And it's honestly just like so refreshing, so fun to read about. And so I loved how he was just obsessed and willing to learn and come back and help the heroine like with whatever he can. And it becomes their romance, and it's slow burn. It's so good. I love this one. It definitely cuts into World War II starting to pick up, and it kind of goes from there, and I was just obsessed with it. It's so good. Ends in an HEA, because a lot of people mention like, do her books end in HEAs because the setups sound wild. They definitely do. It's definitely historical romance. I love it. Morning Glory, Laurel Spencer. I've actually continued on and read a ton of her books this year, but this one is definitely still my favorite. All right, then my last 5-star read for July is Terror at the Gates by Scarlett St. Clair. This is a new book in a new series from her. So this is the first book in an urban fantasy romance series that is going to be the Blood of the Lilith series. It has really pretty like end papers in here, and the exterior as well. Has this map set up. This book, I will say, it low-key gave me Crescent City vibes, especially the first book, which if you know when you read this one, you'll kind of know what I'm talking about. It's not like overtly that, and it's not just because it's urban fantasy. There's like very specific things in here that happen that reminded me of Crescent City, especially like House of Earth and Blood. I definitely think that it is a good new urban fantasy. It's one of my favorite fantasies of the year. This one, I have read this author in the past, and some of her books work for me, some haven't, and so I was excited to see where this one stood, and I really enjoyed it. I feel like it's one that's more underrated. I haven't heard a lot of people talking about this book, so I highly recommend. This is the first in the series, and basically in this world, it has to do a lot with like kind of religion playing into things and the feminine rage of it and taking it down, kind of the patriarchy and all of the things. So in here, the heroine and her family, like all the women in this family / in this world, I think, have magic, have powers within them. And so the men kind of just use them as conduits, and they will kind of suck up their power, suck up the magic of the women around them, whether that is her father, their brothers, their husbands eventually. And so she's very much in this like patriarchal world where eventually she knows her father is going to pick a husband for her. So she's kind of just come to terms with that, but her father gives her like a little year of a break to go and kind of do her own thing, go to these other different districts in this kind of world that they live in. And so she ends up kind of doing that, and along the way she gets kind of pulled into this kind of like murder mystery happening. And so she has to go to the hero for kind of a sanctuary. Their families are supposed to be kind of like opposing or enemies, but her and the hero are actually kind of friends. And so we see this like slow burn of him just wanting to protect her, take care of her. He is very much into her, and it kind of goes from there. I loved it. I loved the like mystery happening, the very much urban fantasy of this. It was just so good. I'm super intrigued to continue on if you want like feminine rage, rebellion, all of that thing mixed with this like magical, very like slightly religious undertones, but more in like a let's take that down type of vibe. This one really worked for me. I loved it. All right, next up is August. I read 27 books for August, and I had 3 5-star reads reads, so let's get into them. First up is Lucky Shot by Rebecca Jinshak. So this is the first book in a new hockey romance, a sports romance series from her. So this is book 1 in her Moonshot hockey series, and I love this one. Rebecca Jinshak, I've been reading her for years. Her sports romances always hit for me, but in particular, I feel like her books are just getting better and better in the last couple years. This one I loved, and here it was super fun because the heroine is a romance author, and then the hero is a single dad and a hockey player, and so this one felt very fresh, very new for hockey romance, because in here the heroine is a romance author and she is trying to pitch to this new editor, and basically the editor is like, hey, you had that like baseball sports romance, anyway you could change that and make it hockey. Like, hockey is so hot right now, could you make it into a hockey romance and say do it in 6 weeks? And so the heroine was kind of like, maybe, because I know nothing about hockey, but let me like take a crash course and learn. And so her agent, her editor, all of them, they kind of hook her up and they tell her, okay, we found like a hockey guy, a hockey player in Montana, so you have to leave Arizona, go live with him, stay with him for 6 weeks, get a crash course on hockey, learn all the things, write the book, and then come back. And so she does that. And I love in here how she's very sunshiny and the hero is very much more grumpy. And when she shows up at his house, he has no idea because her agent actually set it up with the hero's dad who lives with him. And so his dad's very meddling in his romance and his life, trying to hook him up with people. And so his dad had said yes to this. So the hero is like, well, what do you mean you're living with me? And what do you mean I'm trying to teach you about hockey? So it goes from there, and it's just so good. It felt like fresh because it's more of the hero trying to teach the heroine about hockey so she can write about it in her romance books, as well as it's like the off season, so some of his teammates are there, which you get to meet as well, which I'm sure we'll see more in the series. And you kind of see some of them helping out with like different camps and different hockey camps and things happening for younger kids, and it's just so fun and I loved it. So fresh. I love the like grumpy sunshine pairing. Highly recommend. This is Lucky Shot by Rebecca Jinshak. All right, the next two I'm going to talk about together because these were rereads for me, and this is part of a duet for Kandi Steiner. So the first book is What He Doesn't Know, and then book 2 is What He Always Knew. So this is her Best Kept Secrets duet, and this series I loved. I originally read it like 7-8 years ago, and so I've been always wanting to reread it, and I'm so glad I did. It hit for me so well. So this is a very angsty love triangle. There's cheating, there's all the things. It's very messy. All the characters are cheating in this book, but it's honestly so good. So in here, I love the way that Kandi writes the emotional elements and how you really don't know who the heroine is going to stay with, who's better for her, all the things. Basically in here, the heroine has been married for like 8 years, and you see that her and her husband suffered a tragedy. She was pregnant and they lost their children, and so they're definitely dealing with the tragedies, and they've kind of dealt with it on their own, very separate from one another. They've really pulled back from each other, and she's just feeling lost, alone, and so sad and so sickened with grief. It all makes sense because obviously what they've been through. And so you see how she just doesn't feel like herself anymore, and she doesn't know if her husband loves her anymore, and she doesn't know if she feels the same way towards him either. And so at the same time, her crush from her past / this old family friend who she knew and was obsessed with when she was a teen moves back to town, and he becomes a teacher at the school where she also works, and he is just full of life, full of fun, and he sees her and he knows that she is sad, and he remembers the woman that she used to be, and he really wants to bring that out of her, bring her back to herself. And so you see him coming into her life at kind of the perfect / wrong time, because now he is kind of doing all these things, proving to her how amazing she is, how much she's loved, all the things her husband's not doing, this man is now doing for her. So it goes from there, and like I said, it's messy, it's angsty, there's cheating, and it's just so good because the duet, definitely need to read them together to see what happens. And I love this book so much, but you definitely have to be down for the angst, for the mess, and just know that the emotional journey is like such a good payoff. I love it so much. So this is What He Doesn't Know, is the first book in this Best Kept Secrets duet from Kandi Steiner. All right, and then last up is September. I read 29 books for the month, and I had 5 5-star reads. Let's get into them. First up is The Gingerbread Bakery by Lori Gilmore. This is book 5 in her Dream Harbor, like small town cozy series. I've really enjoyed this series, but this one is definitely my favorite in the series. I think this is the only book I've given 5 stars to in the series. This one is a small town, it's second chance, and it's just so good. These are characters that we've been following throughout the series, and you kind of get to see the reasons of them kind of hating one another and their second chance of it all. So in here, the heroine and the hero have grown up in the small town their whole lives, and because of some things in their past, the heroine has always kind of hated the hero, but also secretly been into him, and then him as well. He's always been into her, but knows she doesn't like him, so he's kind of just kept his distance, kept it to himself. So you see a moment in their past that they had when they were teenagers, and then kind of the lead up of now, it's a decade later, that they are now back in the small town together, and they are kind of thrown together because they are both part of a mutual friend's wedding. So the heroine in here owns the bakery in town, and it's really just a second chance, and this one is told in flashback slash dual timeline, and you get to see all the reasons of how they were in the past. And I loved in here the hero's like flashbacks of him seeing how obsessed he was with the heroine and just all of his feelings around it. This book had me so giddy, so excited when I was reading it. I was obsessed with their romance in the past and seeing them kind of come together, realize that like thin line between love and hate is so slim for them. And I just loved it. It's just so good, so cozy, just like perfect for a seasonal read as well, because it kind of takes place in winter slash fall into winter, I guess. Definitely more winter, as you can kind of tell by the cover, but I loved it so much. My favorite in the series. If you love Second Chance, highly recommend. All right, the next one is Tower by Claire Kent. So you know that I love Claire Kent books around here. This is a super cutie little novella. It's post-apocalyptic, and this is the first one in her like fairy tale retellings novella series. This one, if you can't tell by the cover, it's definitely a Rapunzel retelling, hence her hair falling down. The back, this little like novella is so stinking cute from the author that I was sent. It has a step back moment as well in color. And then the back has like some interior art as well. I absolutely love this one. I've been reading Claire Kent books for years, and her post-apocalyptic dystopian romances work for me so well. This one's really fun because, like I mentioned, it is just a novella, and I feel like it was the perfect length for what I wanted with these characters. It has that fairy tale slash very lightly Rapunzel vibes, which this book kind of exists in that overarching world that the author has created and written. So it's like something happened to Earth, and it is kind of in this post-apocalyptic setting. And so in here, the heroine has kind of lived sheltered, taken care of by her father, kind of kept away in her house, in her tower, so to speak, not in a bad way, but just like in a protective way. And so you see that at the start of the story, her father has passed away, and the heroine knows that in this world, very much like hard times, survival, it's very dangerous, that she needs to kind of group herself with a community, with other people who will maybe help take care of her. Things like she needs that community, like that surrounding, because you're better in a group than you are on your own. And so she knows that the hero and his crew, who were former like MC club members, hence the motorcycle, in the real world, like before the like impact that happened to Earth, the hero and his friends were all part of this like MC club. And so you see in here that they are kind of around where she lives. She kind of already knows about them because her father has traded with this kind of group, this community in the past. And so she goes to the hero, who is the leader of this group, and she asks if they can have this like transactional relationship where she's like, you can pretend I'm your woman, you can pretend you stole me, any of the things, and I will do whatever it takes as long as I can be a part of your community and have shelter, have safety, have your guys' protection. And so it kind of goes from there. Of course, it's a romance between them. So of course there's real feelings, all the things being developed in the book. And I loved it so much. Fairy tale, retelling, Rapunzel vibes, but make it post-apocalyptic. I loved it. This is Tower by Claire Kent. It's out now. Next up is Rising Rain by Tessa Hale. This is book 3 in that Wolves of Crescent Creek series. So here is the gorgeous foiled cover. Again, those beautiful sprayed edges. The foiling is just so good. Like I love this author's hardcovers so much. We have a beautiful end paper scene, and then this also comes with like an art vellum of the heroine and her 5 mates. Like I mentioned earlier, this is a Why Choose, Wolf Shifters, Paranormal, Fated Mates trilogy, and this is the final book in the trilogy. So we finally get to see all of them kind of coming together, as well as taking down the big bad that we've been following in the series. And I loved how this one ended. If you want like Why Choose, where all the heroes feel different and unique, this author does that so well. I read all of her books. I love them. This is definitely a favorite series of mine from her. Highly recommend. The whole series is out now, and it would be like the perfect binge because the first 2 books all leave off on cliffhangers, but they're all out now. They have amazing audiobooks. Highly recommend checking them out. This one is Rising Rain. All right, next is If It Makes You Happy by Julie Olivia. So this one is everything I ever wanted. It is 1997 in Vermont. It's fall. It's small town. The heroine in here is a new owner of a bed and breakfast that her late mother left her, and so she has to come and run the inn. She is a bit more black cat energy, grumpy energy, where she had to leave the city behind, come to this small town to run the bed and breakfast. And then the hero is her neighbor, as well as the baker in town. He's a single dad, and so you see how they kind of are around one another a lot because of that forced proximity, as well as he kind of bakes for the bed and breakfast at times. And the heroine is kind of told by her sister, like, hey, you should like make friends in the community, make friends with the guests who are staying at the inn, like you get to know some of these people. And so she decides, okay, the hero's always here, so I will become friends with him. And so he starts to try to like introduce her to the community, to the town that he's a part of. And it goes from there, and it's so good. So it's like a friends to lovers, slow burn, set in the fall, set in the 90s, all those like nostalgic vibes. I loved this one to pieces, and I'm so glad that I finally got to it. So this is If It Makes You Happy by Julie Olivia. Definitely worth all the hype, all the praise. I've read this author in the past, but this is definitely my favorite from her. All right, and then the last one is a reread that I did in September. So this is All the Missing Missing Pieces by Catherine Cowles. This is true crime podcaster heroine, a grumpy sheriff. This is small town. This is romantic suspense. It's a standalone. It's just so good. This one actually came out at the very beginning of the year. I love the foiling, the sprayed edges, the foiling again. It's just so stinking pretty. This one I loved. I actually read it at the end of last year, so it's been like a good 10 months since I read this book, and I loved being back with it. I just had like a busy couple weeks where all I could do was listen to some audiobooks, and so I'm like, let me pop in a reread. And so I jumped into this one and loved it again. And here the heroine, like I said, she has a true crime podcast, and so she is kind of investigating this serial killer who she believes his first victim lives in this town that she ends up coming to, this small town. And so she is trying to investigate it not only for her podcast but for some personal reasons as well, some personal connections. So she comes to the small town and she runs into the hero, who is a grumpy sheriff in town, and he was like, who's this outsider coming to our small town to kind of like profit off of our tragedy, our trauma? I don't think so. And so you quickly see that, of course, she has different reasons for being there, and they actually start to work together on some cases and things, and it kind of goes from there. It's just so good. If you want like small town romantic suspense, Catherine Cowles just does it so well. And this one in particular, I feel like leans more into the romantic suspense than some of her other ones, but also has like a gorgeous, beautiful HEA because it is a small town romance as well. So highly recommend. This is All the Missing Pieces, Catherine Cowles. All right, those were all 19 5-star reads that I had for July, August, and September of this year. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully you got some recommendations from this. If you have had any 5-star reads recently in these months, definitely let me know. I would love to hear about them or read them myself. And if you want to check out any of these, like I said, they're all linked below in the description of the video, so you can go grab them for yourself. And if you'd rather leave me an emoji in the comments today to let me know that you watched this video, leave me a star emoji for all of these 5-star reads. They all deserve all the stars, so leave me some star emojis. If you haven't done so yet, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!